Video games are a very popular form of entertainment, and for many, a way of escaping from the stresses of daily life. The global gaming industry became popularized in 1972 with the first commercially successful game, Pong. The market then quickly became saturated with new arcade titles, and by the end of the 70s, a hobby culture was forming. In 1978, the most popular of these arcade games, Space Invaders, was released. It created a revenue of $2 billion in quarter pieces by 1982, revolutionized the market, and started to form the golden age of video games. From these two initial games, there was a realization that the consumer market was interested in this technology, and the industry started to bloom. Currently, the growth of the video game industry is reported to jump from $83 billion in 2014 to around $102 billion in 2017. Gaming is fast becoming the dominant cultural medium, and other entertainment industries are seeing its strength through record-breaking numbers, as in 2013, the highest grossing film was Iron Man 3, which totaled $1.2 billion worldwide. This figure was eclipsed by the popular and violent game Grand Theft Auto 5. It made $800 million in 24 hours and equaled Iron Man in just 3 days. One of the reasons for the exponential increase of this industry is the diversification of its platforms and ability to reach wider audiences.
Come and play with me. Game of War. Play for free now from the App Store.
For many years, the typical consumer was the younger male, and playing video games generally came hand in hand with certain stereotypes. However, the increase in popularity of mobile gaming has allowed for unprecedented accessibility, and games such as Candy Crush and Angry Birds have dragged the core audience into a larger demographic. With such a large industry that's rapidly expanding every year, the glorification of violence has become apparent as these franchises have branched into the mainstream. To what effect this has on the individual and whether a link between transgressive behaviour and video game usage is a hot topic of debate. The first violent video game was produced in 1976 and called Death Race. In this game, the user scored points by running down pedestrians. Sounds pretty brutal, right? Well, this is what it looked like. And it was so controversial at the time that it led to the National Safety Council denouncing the game, and the CBS News held an hour-long special investigation into the psychological impact of video games. Video games since then have increased their ability to portray violence through technological advancements in graphical power and 3D modelling, as well as bigger budgets for popular gaming companies, means that there's more imaginative ways of showing violence. As the quality of games increase, the line of controversy is being pushed back as we further become desensitized to violence. The media uses its influence to capitalize on any controversy and points fingers towards those who could be to blame, and the playing of video games is often cited as a factor in motivating violent youth crimes such as the high school shootings in the US.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He has shot out a window.
Okay, has anybody been injured, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the school is in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the tables, kids. Heads under the table. I saw a student outside. I was in hall duty. Oh, dear God. Okay, I was on hall duty. I saw a gun. I said, what's going on out there? And he turned the gun straight at us and shot. And my God, the window went out. And the kid standing there with me, I think he got hit.
We've got help on the way, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Stay in line with me.
Oh, God. He's shooting in the library right now. He's firing shots from the library. Firing shots in the library. Our way, do we need to leave?
Okay, hold on here.
Bridget, tell somebody inside the temperature. I'm going to have to try and get out of here and call you back.
Okay. Call them before trying to find out where I'm supposed to go and put me on hold for a minute.
Columbine High School massacre happened on April 12, 1999, in which two students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, opened fire in their school, murdering 12 students and one teacher. They injured another 21 people and concluded the tragedy by committing suicide. As it was regarded as one of the worst school massacres, following the events there was a mass debate on the motive behind the shooting. There were some links to the music of Marilyn Manson and the film Natural Born Killers as an influence. However, the media primarily latched onto the video game Doom, as both the killers played the game excessively. There's also a reference to the fact that Harris made custom levels for the game, and some made ties to the fact that they look very similar to the halls of the high school. On one hand, there's the side of Jerabeck, a researcher and psychiatrist who concluded that Harris and Klebold went on the rampage after their parents took away video game privileges. On the other hand, there's the likelihood that the media reporting on the massacre used various scapegoats to target the cause, considering that most experts concluded that Harris was a clinical psychopath and Klebold was depressed. That being said though, nobody truly knows the motives behind either of the killers. There's definitely a cause of concern for excessive use of something on a daily basis, but this can also be down to the underlying issues of the person, so maybe more concern should be paid to the individual rather than attaching to the object. So is there actually any evidence to suggest that video games cause transgressive behaviour? Well, if a person listens to music, then they hear about violence. If they watch a film, then they see violence. If a person plays a video game, then they are doing the violence. Looking at this from a psychological perspective, it could lead individuals to be more susceptible to violent reactions if they increase involvement in participating in simulated violence. There are studies to show a correlation between this concept. Griffiths in 1999 did a literary review on whether video games caused aggressiveness in younger people. While some studies showed a link between younger people playing and observing video games, this was based on watching a child's free play, and from this they could conclude that video games had positive and negative effects based on design. They also could have more resounding effect on younger children and less of an effect if they had reached teenager years. A more recent study from the American Psychological Association found that violent video game play is linked to increased aggression in players. It is based upon the accumulation of risk factors that cause aggression, and stated that video game use is one such risk factor, although the link could not be extended to criminal violence or delinquency. Another study by Ferguson in the Journal of Psychiatric Research was a 3-year longitudinal study of adolescents, in which the results indicated that exposure to video game violence was not related in any negative outcomes, and exposure to family violence and peer influence were best predictors of aggression. Overall, there is conflicting evidence on this issue, and it cannot be firmly shown either way if video games create more violent or delinquent acts. Yet there is some evidence to show increased aggression, and the next 20 seconds will consolidate this.
What the fuck? Fucking die!
Nej!
Ja men nej, jag tror att det är sant!
Va? Inget speciellt för vi har med det. På Linux.
Fuck you!
If there was a firm link established, then who would be to blame for the cause of transgressive behaviour? Is it the gaming industry for producing the games in the first place, and establishing a culture in which consumers are increasingly swayed by violent titles, and players are rewarded for being the antagonist that commits violent acts? Is it the parents' fault? Because the violent games in question are strictly regulated by a global rating system, and yet many underage children are allowed to play by the parents, especially titles like Call of Duty that have a massive underage following, and so does this lack of responsibility allow for transgressive behaviour? Ultimately, I think that a contribution of both factors allows for social acceptance in which the gaming industry can capitalise on the consumer, especially now that a younger gaming demographic has been established. Also, the parent conforms to social trends, as a lot of kids today just want to play online together, so it's difficult for the parent to engage differently as they then become the enemy. That combined with platforms such as YouTube and Twitch streaming that glamorise and make gaming more of a social norm, and popular YouTubers almost become like role models to the younger demographic and make the excitement of violent games more enticing. With the video game industry booming and new technologies such as virtual reality starting to become more mainstream, our society is becoming more and more exposed to the gaming culture, which in turn exposes us to violence whether we want to see it or not.